He was broke. He was laughed at. And he worked for years on something everyone said was impossible, making rubber that wouldn't melt in the heat or crack in the cold. One night, in frustration, he threw his experiment onto a hot stove, and that moment, a total accident, changed the world. In the early 1800s, natural rubber was a disaster. It was this miracle material from the Amazon, but it had a fatal flaw. In the summer heat, it turned into a sticky, foul-smelling goo. Come winter, it would get as hard and brittle as old glass. People tried making everything from shoes and coats to waterproof bags, but after just one season, they were all useless. Imagine buying a brand new pair of rain boots, only for them to melt onto the pavement on the first hot day. That was the reality. But one man, a hardware merchant from Connecticut named Charles Goodyear, became convinced he could solve the puzzle. He wasn't a scientist or a chemist. He was just a guy who saw a problem and became utterly, completely obsessed with fixing it. He dove headfirst into a world of bizarre experiments. He'd mix the raw rubber with anything he could get his hands on: salt, pepper, ink, even witch hazel. He turned his family's kitchen into a makeshift laboratory, a chaotic mess of boiling pots, strange chemicals, and constant acrid fumes. His neighbors thought he was insane, this man who seemed to be cooking smelly tree sap all day and night. His obsession was all-consuming. To fund his endless experiments, he sold off his children's school books, their furniture, piece by piece, until there was almost nothing left. His family went from comfortable to destitute. He was so deep in debt that he was thrown into debtor's prison multiple times. But even there, locked in a cell, he didn't stop. He persuaded his wife to bring him a rolling pin and a slab of rubber, and he kept on experimenting right there on the prison floor. He was a man driven by a belief that no one else shared, sacrificing everything for a breakthrough that seemed like it would never come. Years passed. Failure after failure mounted. By the winter of 1839, Goodyear was at his wits' end. He was living in Woburn, Massachusetts, still broke, still ridiculed, but still experimenting. One evening, he was showing off his latest mixture, a concoction of rubber and sulfur, to a group of people at the local general store. He was hoping this combination would finally be the one. But as he gesticulated wildly, full of nervous energy, the sticky lump of rubber flew out of his hand. It sailed across the room and landed with a sizzle right on top of a scorching hot potbelly stove. Everyone probably groaned. Another failed batch, now stinking up the room as it burned. But Goodyear, about to scrape it off in disgust, noticed something incredible. The rubber wasn't melting into a sticky puddle like it always did. Instead, it was charring, like leather. It was hardening, but it wasn't becoming brittle. He scraped the charred piece off the stove. It was firm, yet flexible. He hung it outside in the freezing Massachusetts night, and the next morning it was still pliable. It didn't crack. It didn't shatter. It was perfect. The intense heat from the stove, combined with the sulfur, had triggered a chemical reaction. By pure dumb luck, Charles Goodyear had just stumbled upon the process he would later call vulcanization, the very process that would transform rubber from a novelty into one of the most essential materials of the modern industrial world. It wasn't the result of a brilliant theory or a calculated experiment. It was a complete and total accident, born from a moment of pure frustration. You'd think this would be the happy ending, the part where our hero becomes a rich and famous inventor. But that's not what happened. Goodyear had discovered the secret, but he was still penniless. He struggled for years to perfect the process and, more importantly, to convince people that this new vulcanized rubber was the real deal. He was so poor he couldn't afford to file for patents in every country. This was a fatal mistake. Unscrupulous rivals, both in America and Europe, saw the potential. They stole his process, filed their own patents, and started building massive rubber empires. Companies that would one day become household names were founded on Goodyear's stolen discovery, making millions while he was left fighting for recognition. His life became a series of endless, draining court battles. He was constantly suing for patent infringement, trying to prove that he was the true inventor. He won some cases but lost others, and the legal fees were astronomical. He spent what little money he made defending his own creation. His name was becoming known, but his pockets were always empty. In 1860, on his way to see his dying daughter, Charles Goodyear collapsed and died in New York City. He was just 59 years old. When they tallied his finances, he was over $200,000 in debt, a colossal sum for the time. He never saw the true impact of his work. He never knew that his name would become synonymous with the very industry that was built on his accidental discovery, stamped onto millions of tires on cars that would one day race across a world he helped build. Charles Goodyear didn't invent the tire. He invented what made the tire possible. His failure, his accident, that one clumsy moment in a cold general store, became one of humanity's most useful and versatile materials. It's in the soles of our shoes, the hoses in our gardens, and the belts that run our engines. His story is a powerful reminder that sometimes the biggest breakthroughs don't come from a grand plan. Sometimes they come from the smallest mistakes. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as we did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more. We'll see you in the next one.